Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. It's a deep slice of 19th-century Moroccan history.
That's right. We're looking at this really ambitious, state-sponsored educational program. Sultan Moulay Hassan decided to send young Moroccans, bright kids, to Europe.
And not just anywhere, but with a heavy focus on Italy, interestingly enough. The idea was modernization, fast, bypassing the usual elites, too.
Exactly. And our sources, they're these detailed scholarly articles. They call it a pilgrimage for knowledge in Christian lands, which is quite evocative.
It really is. So our mission, yours and mine and yours listening, is to unpack this. What does it tell us about, attempts at modernization back then, social mobility?
And the resistance, too. Because when you try something this radical, there's always pushback, especially culturally and politically.
What happens when this ancient, deeply intellectual society decides it needs a crash course from Europe to survive? That's the core question, isn't it?
It is. But crucially, we need to frame this right from the start. This wasn't Morocco suddenly discovering knowledge or science. Far from it.
Absolutely. That's a key point. Morocco has this incredibly long, rich tradition. We're talking centuries of scholarship.
You just have to think of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez. I mean, it's widely recognized as the oldest continuously operating university in the world.
Still running today. That establishes a building line, doesn't it? A deep pre-existing commitment to learning long before many European institutions even existed.
Precisely. So the idea wasn't importing knowledge into some kind of vacuum. It was more like, upgrading an already powerful intellectual engine, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. And this tradition was always outward-looking, too, wasn't it? It wasn't purely insular.
Not at all. Think about someone like Ibn Battuta, the quintessential Moroccan traveler scholar.
Right. Journeying everywhere, seeking knowledge, experience, understanding that sometimes you have to go abroad to find what you need. He's the perfect historical precedent for this kind of outlook.
So when Sultan Moulay Hassan starts sending these student missions in the 19th century, it's kind of in that same spirit, a continuation of looking outwards.
But with a totally new urgency.
Completely new. The stakes were sky high. They weren't primarily after religious philosophy this time. They needed modern science, modern engineering, and especially military tech.
It was about survival. National survival, essentially, dressed up as an educational exchange. Okay, so let's unpack that urgency. The 19th century. It was brutal for non-European powers facing colonial expansion. The technology gap was just immense.
Devastatingly so. And the Sultan wasn't just theorizing about this. He was reacting to very specific, very painful military defeats. Humiliations, really.
These were the catalysts, right?
Absolutely. You have the French victory at the Battle of Isly in 1844. That was a shocker.
Showed that traditional cavalry, old muskets, they just couldn't compete anymore.
Not against modern firepower. And then just 15 years later, 1859, you have the Spanish conquest of Tetuan, another major blow.
So these weren't just lost battles. They were proof, really, that the whole system, the military, the tech behind it, it wasn't enough anymore.
The writing was on the wall. Avoid colonization. You needed modern arms, modern engineering, and crucially, you needed your own people who could build, maintain, and operate it all.
Right. You couldn't just buy the hardware. You needed the software, the human expertise.
Exactly. So these defeats created a sort of reluctant consensus, at least at the top in the Makhzen, the government structure. Status quo wasn't an option.
And Moulay Hassan I, he seems utterly convinced. Modernization, especially military and technical, was absolutely non-negotiable for sovereignty.
He was. And he came up with his dual approach, a two-pronged strategy, if you like.
Okay, what were the two prongs?
Well, first he had the diplomatic track. He knew he had to manage the European powers politically. So he sent out ambassadors, lots of them.
Trying to negotiate treaties, play them off against each other, standard 19th century diplomacy for a state under pressure.
Pretty much. Trying to keep Morocco independent through political maneuvering, commercial deals, you know the drill.
And the second prong.
That's where our students come in. Simultaneously, he launches these expeditions of young Moroccans. Their mission: learn European languages, science, and technical skills.
Specifically to build that human capital, the guys who could run the new mint, build the forts, navigate the steamships.
Precisely that. Practical, applied knowledge for national infrastructure and defense.
And the scope initially, it was pretty broad, wasn't it? They didn't just pick one country?
No, initially it was a bit of a scattergun approach, like you said earlier. Desperate times. They sent groups to Belgium, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Spain.
Wow, okay. Covering all the main players, trying to soak up expertise wherever they could find it.
Yeah, but it quickly became clear that not all these partnerships were equally, let's say, productive or enthusiastic.
Okay, so while France and Britain were maybe the big diplomatic headaches or partners,
it was Italy that emerged as the key destination for the educational mission, the place where the student program really took root and scaled up.
Right, that Italian connection, it's central to the story. Why Italy? Why did they become the go-to compared to, say, France or Britain, who were arguably more powerful militarily and industrially at the time?
It seems to boil down to a couple of things. One was Italy's relative enthusiasm for the project, and maybe less colonial baggage, or perhaps different colonial ambitions at that specific moment.
Okay. How do we see that play out?
Well, the numbers are pretty telling. The very first group sent to Italy back in 1876 was tiny, just 3 students.
Okay, a pilot program almost.
Seems like it, but it must have gone well because things scaled up fast. By 1884, they sent 12 students. Then, just a few years later, 1887-88, they doubled it again to 24.
That's a serious escalation, doubling and doubling again. It suggests the Sultan was seeing results he liked and felt Italy was a reliable partner for this specific goal.
It really does, especially when you compare it to the other powers. Our sources mention France and Britain being, well, reluctant to take on more students.
Reluctant? Why? Maybe they didn't want Morocco getting too modern, too capable. Threat to their own influence.
That's highly likely. Britain, for instance, apparently didn't renew its student groups. France was always wary. Italy, on the other hand, kept welcoming them. And the students sent to Italy generally stayed for longer training periods, too.
So Italy saw an opportunity here, a way to build influence in North Africa, maybe counter the French.
Absolutely. It was strategic for them. Embracing this Moroccan initiative gave them diplomatic leverage, a friendly relationship, maybe future commercial opportunities.
And that very first group of 3, their success must have been absolutely critical in building that trust. You need those early wins, don't you?
Crucial. These first 3, they studied at the International Academy in Turin for 7 years, a long time. Until 1882.
7 years, that's dedication.
It is. And when they returned, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mohammed Bargash, gave this glowing report to the Sultan. He said they came back with a great degree and that each one excels more than the other in a particular art.
Excels in a particular art. I love that phrasing. It's not just they passed. It implies specialized, useful skills. Just what the Sultan needed.
Exactly. High-level, specific training. And the Sultan was apparently thrilled. So much so, he sent a gilded dagger as a gift to the school's director in Turin.
A gilded dagger. That really shows his personal investment, doesn't it? It wasn't just policy. It was something he cared deeply about.
It clearly was. And that initial success paved the way for the bigger expeditions, deeper cooperation.
And lucky for us, digging into this story now, these students who went to Italy, they left records, didn't they?
They did, and that's fantastic. We're not just relying on government memos or dry diplomatic reports. We have letters they wrote home, and even some really important autobiographies. There's Al-Hussein Zahri's memoir and Moulay Ahmed Djebli El Aydouni's memoirs. These give us this amazing ground-level view. The culture shock, the studies, the ambitions, it's all in there.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts. How did this actually work? It sounds like the Sultan wasn't just delegating this. He was really involved.
Oh, incredibly hands-on. This wasn't some vague idea. It was a tightly controlled project managed by the Makhzen, the government. And the Sultan himself was deep in the details.
Like what sort of details?
We have a royal letter from 1882, for example. It instructs officials exactly what kind of training to look for. People skilled in navigation, engineering, and maritime knowledge. Specific practical skills.
Okay, so targeted training.
And he even specified numbers. Like, for each European country involved at that stage, he wanted 6 trainees, 2 in specialized schools for navigation and engineering, and 4 learning practical seamanship on ships. Very granular.
That's intense. He's tracking inputs and outputs, which suggests he was also tracking performance and willing to make changes if things weren't working.
Absolutely. He learned quickly. There was this early realization that maybe the first batch of students, well, maybe they weren't the right fit, particularly regarding age.
Okay. What was the issue?
He specifically ordered a shift away from older students. He mentioned a group of 12 from Rabat and Saleh who did not show aptitude for learning due to their old age. And critically, they struggle with the languages.
Ruthless. Basically saying, these guys are too old, they're not picking it up fast enough, send them home, cut his losses.
Pretty much. The new strategy was clear. Focus on young, brilliant children. We're talking 12, 13 years old.
Wow, that young. That's a long-term bet.
It is. But it shows he understood that deep immersion, especially language acquisition, works best when you start young. Their brains were more adaptable. He needed kids who could really soak it all up.
Which leads us to the selection process itself. This sounds like maybe the most radical part of the whole thing, because it wasn't necessarily about picking kids from the elite families, was it?
No, and that's crucial for understanding the later backlash. It seems to have been surprisingly meritocratic, or at least aimed to be.
Where were they recruiting from?
Mainly the key urban centers. Tangier, Fez, Meknès, Tétouan, Saleh, Rabat, Larache. Standard centers of population and influence.
And how did they pick them?
It was meticulous. And interestingly, foreign representatives were sometimes involved. For one mission to Italy, the dragoman, the translator and representative from the Italian consulate in Tangier, a guy named Gentile Giantel.
Oh, yeah.
He actually traveled around different Moroccan cities, specifically to help select eligible students. They were really scouting for talent.
Foreigners helping pick Moroccan students for state-sponsored education abroad. That underlines the strategic importance for Italy, doesn't it?
It really does. But the background of the students is what's really disruptive here.
How so? How did it compare to what other countries were doing? Like Egypt, maybe?
Well, the sources contrasted directly. Students sent from Egypt to France around the same time, mostly from elite families connected to the government, the establishment kids.
Right, keeping it within the existing power structure.
But the Moroccan students sent by Moulay Hassan, often from ordinary backgrounds. There's this great example of the Townsy brothers from Tangier, described as coming from an underprivileged background.
So a cobbler's apprentice like Djebli later, or kids from less wealthy families, could actually get picked based on smarts, not status.
That seems to have been the vision, prioritizing potential over pedigree, which you can imagine did not go down well with the traditional elites who expected their sons to get these opportunities. It was a direct challenge to their privilege.
Undermining the old guard, and the whole thing must have cost a fortune. Who paid?
The Makhzen. The government footed the entire bill. It was a massive state investment.
Oh, massive.
We have figures like 37,000 pesetas annually just for the tuition of 15 students in Italy. That's a huge sum back then, equivalent to a serious military budget item.
And that covered everything. Travel, fees.
Everything. Travel, tuition, board. The Sultan even specifically requested officials add extra money for little expenses so the students wouldn't be distracted by hardship. He saw them as a vital national asset.
But before they could even get to Italy or Germany or wherever, that language hurdle, you mentioned it earlier, how did they tackle that?
It was a huge bottleneck.
Yeah.
Every group needed preliminary language training, usually in Tangier. And this could take years, literally years.
Years just learning Italian or French before starting engineering or military science.
Yes. And it didn't always work. There's this painful example of one group from Saleh and Rabat. They spent 7 years in Tangier studying French and Italian with 2 instructors.
7 years? Surely they'd be fluent by then.
You'd think.
Oh.
But the report back to the Sultan was they showed no result after 7 years.
Ouch. What did the Sultan do?
He cut them off, suspended the funding immediately, sent the students home, dismissed the instructors. Zero tolerance for that kind of failure, especially after so much time and money. Performance mattered.
Wow. Tough, but maybe necessary. But this need for language prep, it must have changed Tangier itself.
It absolutely did. It helped fuel Tangier's rise as this really cosmopolitan, multilingual hub. European languages became highly valued skills there.
So schools popped up.
Exactly. There's mention in 1895 of the Madrasat Italian, the Italian school, being established in Tangier. It became a center for language learning, specifically preparing students for these missions. Tangier was the launch pad.
Okay, so picture these kids, maybe 12, 13 years old, some from quite humble backgrounds. They finally get through language training. They board a ship. What was it like arriving in, say, Turin, stepping into a European military academy?
It must have been overwhelming. Total immersion, immediate culture shock. Al-Hussein Zari, one of the students we mentioned, he writes about it vividly.
What does he say?
He describes the journey on an Italian battleship, the Dandolo to Genoa, then the train to Turin. And just their arrival,
Yeah.
their appearance caused a stir. He writes that walking from the station to the school attracted full attention, especially since we were still dressed in the traditional Moroccan attire, the kaftan enclosed within the malifa robe that we had donned in Tangier.
You can just picture it, can't you? These kids in distinctly Moroccan robes, stepping onto the streets of Turin, heading for a military school. They would have stood out dramatically, a visible symbol of this whole project.
Absolutely. And the Italian institutions, they seem to have understood the sensitivity of this. They made efforts to accommodate the students' cultural and religious needs.
Like how? To reassure the Sultan back home.
Exactly. The school in Turin assigned them a special cook. They made sure to provide halal meat.
Okay, that's significant. Practical support.
And apparently effective. We have a letter from 3 students mentioning they were treated with the utmost respect and kindness. That kind of report would have gone a long way to calming the Sultan's nerves about them losing their identity.
But the Sultan was worried about that, wasn't he? About the European influence, the distance from home?
Oh, deeply worried. He was walking this tightrope, get the modern knowledge, but don't let the students get, corrupted by foreign ways.
How did that worry manifest?
There's a letter from him expressing this real anxiety. He worried the students might be influenced by non-Islamic practices, that their hearts might incline towards them because of their emptiness, meaning like a spiritual vulnerability from being young and far from home.
That's quite poignant, because of their emptiness.
It is. And he urged the appointment of a suitable chaperone. Someone to go with them, make sure they kept up their prayers, fasted during Ramadan, protected their faith. It shows that constant tension. Modernization versus tradition.
Despite those worries, the environment they were in, it sounds pretty unique, this Instituto Internazionale Italiano.
It really was. Its motto was Frate ex Venis, International Brotherhood.
Catchy. So who else was there?
A real mix. Young guys from South America, Russia, Germany, Japan, even a mission sent by Emperor Menelik of Ethiopia. These Moroccan kids were suddenly rubbing shoulders with the world.
Literally learning alongside future global players, and not just commoners either, right? There's royalty.
Yes. This is maybe the most astonishing part. These students, some from very ordinary backgrounds in Morocco, were classmates with actual princes.
Like who?
Prince Ahmed Fuad, who later became King Fuad I of Egypt. The Prince of Montenegro, whose sister happened to be the Queen of Italy at the time. Aristocrats from all over.
Imagine that transition. From a craftsman's family in Fez to studying engineering alongside the future King of Egypt. That must have fundamentally changed their perspective on everything, their own potential, the world.
Absolutely. It was an incredible social leap, an unparalleled exposure. I couldn't not change them.
Now let's pivot back to the Italian strategy. We touched on it, and their enthusiasm wasn't pure altruism. It was deeply tied into their rivalry with France, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. You have to remember the context. Italy felt deeply betrayed when France snapped up Tunisia in 1881. Italy had its own eyes on Tunisia.
Right, the slap of Tunis.
Exactly. That pushed Italy right into the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary in 1882. They needed allies, or at least friendly powers, to counterbalance France, especially in North Africa.
And a modernizing, potentially stronger Morocco could be useful in pinning down French resources.
Precisely. So Italy wasn't just teaching these Moroccan students engineering. They were using the program for strategic gain. Military intelligence sharing, essentially.
How did that work? Were the students aware?
It seems so. Zari writes about it. During their holidays, and remember, they often stayed for years without going home. They were taken on tours. But not just any tours.
Where did they go?
They were given special permission to visit restricted military zones near the Alps. Zari explicitly mentions exploring secret fortifications along the Italian-French border.
Secret fortifications. Stuff even regular Italians couldn't see.
Apparently so. This was high-level access. Military secrets, basically.
Yeah.
And it wasn't accidental.
The Italians wanted them to see this stuff.
Yes. Zari recounts that the escorting Italian colonel made it quite clear. He hoped they would learn from these defenses and replicate them back in Morocco.
Wow. So the education included tactical military reconnaissance sanctioned by the Italian government.
It looks exactly like that. It was a direct investment in Morocco's potential military capability, specifically aimed against France. Bolstering Morocco served Italy's strategic interests.
And the Italians were also seemingly impressed by Morocco's financial situation at the time. That played a role too.
Definitely. They saw Morocco as a stable, solvent partner, which wasn't always the case with non-European states dealing with European powers. The school director in Turin, Signor de Grosso, actually confided in Zari about this.
What did he say?
He expressed amazement that the Sultan could guarantee 20 million gold coins to establish a national bank. Zari apparently tried to be modest, suggesting Italy must be richer due to industry.
And the director's response?
It's a fantastic quote for the era. He told Zari, "You are wealthier than Italy because you have no debts."
You have no debts. That says so much about 19th century power dynamics, doesn't it? Financial independence was real power.
It really was. And this director, de Grosso, he even shared future strategic plans with Zari, treating him like a future insider.
Plans for Morocco?
Yeah. He mentioned an Italian company planning to lay railway tracks, specifically mentioning gold, silver, and copper routes in Fez, and that Germany had been commissioned to build defense fortresses along the Moroccan coast.
He's sharing major infrastructure and defense projects with a student.
It shows how much importance Italy placed on cultivating these young men as future leaders and partners. They weren't just students, they were strategic assets in training.
So after all this intense training, the military tours, the rubbing shoulders with royalty, these graduates finally return to Morocco. What happens? Do they slot right into these vital roles the Sultan envisioned?
For some, yes. The successful ones gain this reputation, this title almost, the students of languages. It signifies their key skill, bridging the gap with Europe. And they were employed in crucial modernizing sectors.
Like the ones we mentioned, weapons, currency, military.
Exactly. Overseeing arms manufacturing, working in the new mint, becoming captains in the modernized army units, installing coastal batteries, vital translation work in foreign affairs, even going on purchasing missions like to the Krupp factories in Germany for artillery.
So they were fulfilling the technical brief. Zari himself seems like a prime example of this success track, right?
He really is. He gets back in 1898, fluent in English, certificate in hand. He meets the Chamberlain, Ahmed, who is effectively running things then.
And gets a job.
Instantly. He's sent to organize files for the finance minister, finds all the correspondences in English, which he handles easily. Then he's registered in the war ministry by another graduate, someone trained in Britain.
So the network was starting to work, helping graduate.
Seems like it. And Zari gets assigned a really decent monthly stipend, 24 reals. That's quick integration, recognized value, good reward. This system could work.
Could work, but it clearly didn't for everyone. We know the Sultan's plan challenged the old guard. How did that backlash manifest when these graduates returned?
It was significant. The whole initiative wasn't universally seen as a success. Some critics just called it the failure of the Moroccan study abroad program. Full stop.
Why? What were the main issues?
Suspicion and hostility. Mainly from the conservative elites, religious scholars, traditional officials. They saw these returning students with their European clothes, languages, and ideas as a fundamental threat. They worried about cultural corruption, loss of religious identity, and let's be honest, they feared losing their grip on power to these upstarts who had the Sultan's ear, at least initially.
And they used religion to attack them.
Oh, absolutely. That was the most potent weapon. We see Makhzen officials using harsh religious rhetoric, calling the returnees converted asses.
Ouch. That's brutal.
It is. Accusing them of having become Morocco's most embittered enemies after being in Christian lands. It created this really fierce ideological divide. Modernizers versus traditionalists.
And the death of Sultan Moulay Hassan, the guy who started it all, who protected them, that must have been a massive blow.
It was the crucial turning point. His successor's powerful Chamberlain, Bahad, was deeply conservative, really anti-modernization in many ways.
So he just sidelined the graduates?
Largely ignored them, yeah. Their access, their influence, it just evaporated, which meant their expensive specialized training often went completely to waste.
That's tragic. You have examples.
Yeah, there's Mohammed Najjar, studied military science in Germany, highly trained, ends up having to become a farmer just to survive.
A farmer after training at presumably top German military institutions.
Exactly. And he apparently made this bitter comment, something like, the Christians teach the mind, the Muslims render it blunt. Just sheer frustration at being rejected by his own system.
And some graduates got so frustrated they actually sought protection from European powers. That must have infuriated the Makhzen.
Oh, it was seen as the ultimate betrayal. Remember, the state had poured huge sums into their education, expecting loyalty and service in return.
And instead,
you get cases like Al-Mukhtar Rage, one of the very first groups sent to Italy. He ended up becoming a Spanish protege and actually joined the Spanish army.
Joined the Spanish army after Morocco paid for his military training in Italy.
Yep. The Makhzen protested vehemently, obviously, saying we spent all this money on him, employed him as an engineer, and now he's working for a foreign power.
It shows how precarious the graduate's position was. Sometimes foreign protection seems safer than relying on their own government.
Were there others who just gave up on Morocco entirely?
Sadly, yes. The human cost of this reintegration failure was real. Mohammed Tadlaoui, another military graduate from Turin and Modena, also ended up as a farmer. Skills totally wasted.
And some left the country. Yeah. Mohammed El Aydouni also trained in Turin and Modena military schools. He just emigrated, went to São Paulo, Brazil in 1902, and apparently never came back.
Wow. Brazil just gone.
Wow.
All that investment, all that potential just vanished because the system couldn't or wouldn't absorb them after the Sultan's death. There's one figure, though, who seems to embody all these contradictions: the success, the potential, the frustration, the clash with authority. Ahmed Djebli El Aydouni. His story is incredible.
Djebli really is a perfect case study for the whole experiment. His origins, his training, his career, his troubles. It covers everything.
Where did he start? You mentioned him before.
He started as a cobbler's apprentice in Fez, lower class, clearly picked purely on merit for that third expedition to Italy, which again shows the disruptive nature of the selection.
A cobbler's apprentice goes to Italy's top military academies.
For 9 years, studied in Turin and Modena, soaked it all up, came back highly skilled.
And served the Makhzen well, put his training to use.
Absolutely. He became a military engineer, served in tough campaigns against internal revolts, got wounded multiple times. He was exactly the kind of modern, capable figure the Sultan wanted.
He was even involved in buying weapons from Germany.
Yes. In 1900, he led the delegation sent to the Krupp factory to buy cannons. He was right at the heart of the military modernization effort. A real success story, initially.
But then, the friction starts. Even with all that service, his ideas were seen as threatening.
That seems to be the pattern. After he resigned, likely due to his injuries, Sultan Moulay Abdelaziz actually gave him permission to set up a school in Rabat.
A school for what?
Mathematics and foreign languages. Exactly the kind of modern education Morocco needed. Djebli trying to replicate the knowledge transfer domestically.
But it didn't happen.
No. The local governor, the Pasha of Rabat, apparently deliberately obstructed his efforts, protected the old ways, blocked the new school, bureaucratic sabotage.
So frustrating. And it's around this time Djebli does something really unconventional, personally.
Extremely unconventional for the time. He marries a Russian aristocrat, Elena Alexeyevna Bezrukova.
A Russian noblewoman. How did that even happen?
He met her in Algeria, apparently while recovering from his wounds. She was visiting her brother there. It was reportedly the first marriage between a Moroccan man and a Russian noblewoman.
That's boundary breaking in itself. The marriage itself, it blended cultures too.
Completely. They had a Catholic ceremony first in Genoa, Italy in 1903, then later a second ceremony under Islamic law in Morocco. Elena even took the Muslim name Khadija.
Wow. A Catholic wedding in Italy, followed by an Islamic one in Morocco. That's true hybridity. Living the cosmopolitan life he learned abroad.
Absolutely. He wasn't just technically skilled, he was culturally transformed. And this legacy passed to their children.
How so?
Their kids became pioneers in the next generation of modern Morocco. Mohammed became the first Moroccan lawyer, Mariam the first female Moroccan pianist. Another son, Ahmed, became a medical doctor.
That's incredible, the ripple effect of that one student's journey.
It shows the long-term impact, doesn't it? Djebli embodied the potential far beyond just military engineering.
But that very independence, that knowledge, that international connection, it eventually made him dangerous, didn't it? Especially under the French protectorate.
Yes. Once France took over in 1912, figures like Djebli, independent, educated abroad, well-connected, not easily controllable, became suspect.
And he got into trouble over the Berber Dahir.
Exactly. In 1931, he was arrested. The accusation was writing and distributing leaflets against the Berber Dahir.
Remind us, the Berber Dahir was?
It was that hugely controversial French decree. It tried to impose separate Berber customary law instead of Islamic law in Berber areas.
Yeah.
A classic divide and rule tactic by the French to weaken Moroccan unity.
And Djebli actively opposed it.
Yes. His activism was a direct challenge to French colonial policy. Very dangerous.
So they tried to shut him down. What were the charges?
It got messy. initially distributing leaflets. Then it escalated. He was charged with conspiracy with a foreign country because he'd apparently written to the Queen of Holland protesting the Dahir, using his international connections to fight French policy.
That sounds like a trumped-up charge to silence a critic.
It absolutely seems politically motivated. The French military commander at the time, General Nogues, reportedly said they had to make an example of Djebli. It wasn't about justice, it was about demonstrating colonial power.
Make an example of a decorated war veteran, an engineer, someone who tried to build schools because he dared to critique policy.
It shows the hypocrisy. The knowledge France theoretically valued became subversive the moment it challenged their authority.
What happened to Djebli in the end?
He was eventually acquitted, but only after spending 9 months in prison. His story perfectly illustrates that tension. The modern knowledge acquired abroad, intended to strengthen Morocco, ultimately became a source of resistance against both internal conservatism and external colonial power. So when you look back at this whole pilgrimage for knowledge, it's really this pivotal, complex moment, isn't it? Sultan Moulay Hassan's vision was bold.
Yeah, using foreign education, merit-based selection, trying to modernize fast, shake up the old elite by picking bright kids from ordinary backgrounds.
It was a calculated risk, partnering strategically with Italy, hoping to get that technical edge, that diplomatic leverage. And sometimes it worked. Look at Zari getting that war ministry job straight away. The skills were valuable.
But the backlash was just as real. The suspicion, the converted asses rhetoric, the clash between education, politics, religion, social status, it was all tangled up.
Absolutely. For every success, there were graduates facing hostility, their potential wasted. Like Najjar ending up a farmer, or Elouaza leaving for Brazil. The failure to guarantee their political integration back home was a huge flaw.
So what's the big takeaway for us thinking about this today? What does this 19th century experiment tell us?
Well, I think it shows that even when a state invests in education for purely practical reasons, build better cannons, mint better coins.
Right, the immediate, tangible goals.
The outcome is often much bigger and much less controllable. Knowledge, especially the kind gained through deep cultural immersion like this, it takes on a life of its own.
It becomes a political force, almost unintended.
Exactly. These students of languages, their experiences, their hybrid identities, they didn't just bring back engineering skills, they brought back new ways of thinking, cosmopolitan perspectives, maybe even the seeds of modern nationalism.
So, despite the costs, the setbacks, the heartbreaking stories of wasted talent or unnecessary exile, the long-term impact was maybe more profound than the Sultan ever imagined.
I think that's the final thought, isn't it? The Sultan wanted loyal technicians to serve the state. What he inadvertently cultivated was a generation of independent critical thinkers. Some became pioneers, some became rebels like Djebli. It suggests that education, once unleashed, is a force that rulers can't easily predict or contain. It changes people, and changed people eventually change societies, often at great personal cost to themselves.
A powerful lesson about the unpredictable journey of knowledge and modernization. Thanks for digging deep into this one with us.